You ever have one of those moments where someone laughs at you, not in a haha that's funny way, but in a you're small and your voice doesn't matter way? That's what happened to me last Tuesday night at the Bell Creek Town Hall meeting, and let me tell you, something in me snapped. I'm Emily Carr, 35, librarian at the Bell Creek Public Library, PUP. 6400, been working there since I was 24, same desk, same nameplate, same circulation logbook with the corner coffee stains. I run story hour for the kids, host knitting nights on Thursdays, and do tax help for the elderly in March. I'm not flashy. I still live in the same ranch-style home my grandmother left me. I drive a 10-year-old Subaru with a dent on the passenger side. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm not the kind of person who starts fights. But sometimes fights come to you. For weeks, I'd been warning the town council about the Bell Point rezoning application, a shady move that would change a strip of greenbelt between our library and the creek into a mixed-use development. Sounds harmless, right? Except that land floods every year and the developer, Hal Westwood, just so happens to play poker with our mayor every Thursday night. I knew what was coming. Condos, parking lots, and a few half-hearted shops. The library would be boxed in by a wall of concrete. It wasn't just an aesthetic thing. We used that greenbelt for children's programming, outdoor reading days, even emergency overflow when our HVAC system breaks in July. I'd gone to 3 meetings in a row to speak during the public comment period. I came with documents, floodplain maps from FEMA, letters from patrons, photos from last year's flooding. Every time, I was given exactly 90 seconds. Every time, Mayor Donnelly would lean back in his chair, steeple his fingers, and say, "Thank you, Ms. Carr. We'll take it under advisement." Last Tuesday, I brought a map I annotated myself, highlighter, sticky notes, the whole deal. I pointed to the parts that were dangerous. I used calm, professional language. And then Councilman Rick Frazier, he of the expensive golf habit and 2 DUIs buried under sealed court files, leaned forward, looked right at me, and chuckled. "Emily, I think you're a little out of your depth here. Maybe stick to recommending books." I went cold. You know the kind of cold that starts in your chest and seeps down your arms? That's what I felt. I stared at Rick's smug little face. Then I looked around the room. Everyone was watching me. Some with pity, some amused, but no one said a word. That was when I smiled. Because if I was out of my depth, I figured it was time I learned to swim in deeper waters. Here's the thing about small towns. They think librarians are harmless. They forget that we know everything. Tax records? Public. Court documents? Public. City budgets? Public. You just have to know where to look, and I did. I had keys to the archive room and time after hours. Lots of it. So I started digging. I found that Councilman Frazier's landscaping business was listed as the contractor for 3 prior city projects, all of which were over budget. I found the mayor's PAC filings and compared them to recent donations from the Bell Point Development Group. I found the emails between council members discussing the vote before the public had even heard about the rezoning. And then I made a plan. Not revenge. Not yet. But I made sure to archive every file, every page, every timestamp. I set up a burner Gmail. I started compiling a dossier complete with citations and visuals. I remembered something my late father used to say: "You don't win fights with your fists, Emmy. You win them by choosing the battlefield." The battlefield was going to be the media. And next week, the Bell Creek Times would be getting the story of the year. Let me tell you something about small-town newspapers. They're dying. Budget cuts, lack of subscriptions, and everyone thinking they can get news from Facebook memes. But if there's one thing they do love, it's a scandal. Especially one that could slap the smug grin off a good OL boy's face. Enter the Bell Creek Times. I emailed them from my burner account on a quiet Friday night. Subject line: Mayor Donnelly and Council Corruption. Evidence inside. I figured it would go to spam. But within an hour, I got a reply from Dana Holt, the editor and the closest thing Bell Creek has to a pit bull and a cardigan. "Is this real?" she wrote. I sent one screenshot, a city invoice signed by Rick Frazier approving a $24,000 beautification project for the town hall lawn that never happened. Dana replied with her personal number and a single line. "Let's meet." We sat in a corner booth at McMurphy's Diner, the kind where the coffee is burnt and the pie is always out of cherry. I brought a flash drive, and she brought her tape recorder. I showed her the council emails discussing the Bell Point vote 2 weeks before the public hearing. I showed her floodplain overlays, contract dates, donation records. She whistled low. "This is a career ender," she muttered, flicking through a document on her laptop. "And you're just a librarian." "Just a librarian," I said, sipping my decaf. "Who alphabetizes your secrets for a living?" She laughed, really laughed. "You're my new favorite person." By Monday, Dana had a front-page exposé drafted, behind Bell Point, backroom deals, and floodplain lies. She gave me the option to remain anonymous. I said no. Let my name sit under that headline like a quiet storm cloud. The morning it published, Bell Creek went nuclear. The phones at Town Hall lit up like Vegas. Facebook exploded, Bell Creek chat, Bell Creek buy, sell, trade, even the Bell Creek Gardeners group. People were pissed. A dozen angry patrons came into the library that day, not to return books, but to thank me. One woman, Mrs. Laramie, late 60s, church hat that could kill a crow mid-flight, handed me a tin of lemon bars and whispered, "It's about time someone stuck it to those bastards." Councilman Frazier posted a defensive statement calling the article unfounded. Within an hour, someone posted drone footage of his empty landscaping site on the day the town hall lawn was supposed to be renovated. The comments section was a public evisceration. But the mayor? Oh, Mayor Donnelly went silent. His office issued a one-line email. "The matter is under review." Coward. At the next town meeting, the place was packed. Normally there's 6 of us, tops. That night, it was standing room only. Reporters with cameras. Angry locals in flannel and fleece. And me, sitting quietly in the second row, cardigan crisp, notebook open. When the mayor walked in, someone shouted, "Smile for the cameras, Donnelly." He tried to gavel us into silence. It didn't work. And then, because life has a sense of humor, a thunderstorm rolled in. Thunder. Real thunder. Lightning cracked through the stained windows of the hall as if God himself had editorial notes. I stood up and walked to the podium. No notes. No slideshow. Just me and the mic. "My name is Emily Carr," I said. "And for the past 3 weeks, I've been documenting what this council has tried to hide from the public." Dead silence. "I'm not here to be thanked. I'm here because I was laughed at for doing my job. For pointing out facts. For asking questions that no one here wanted to answer." The mayor started to interrupt. I raised a hand and God bless the crowd, they shushed him. I ended with, "This isn't just about a piece of land. It's about every time someone here has been told they don't count. That their voice is too small. Well, I'm small, but I bite." Applause. A real standing ovation. The kind you think only happens in movies. The mayor left the meeting early that night. Through the back door. Rick Frazier turned beet red and accidentally knocked over his microphone. The entire council sat stone-faced, like kids caught cheating mid-test. By Friday, 2 city officials had stepped down pending ethics investigations. By Monday, the mayor's secretary forwarded an anonymous whistleblower letter to Dana at the Times, confirming most of what I'd exposed and adding even more fire. But I wasn't done. Because revenge doesn't stop when the walls crack. It ends when you're the one building new ones in their place. A funny thing happens when you stop being invisible. People start treating you like a threat. By the week after the Bell Point scandal broke, I'd become the town's unlikely hero. Kids at the high school made memes of me holding a magnifying glass over a map like Sherlock Holmes. Mrs. Greeley, who once told me the library smelled like depression, baked me a pecan pie. I got a bouquet of daisies from an anonymous sender with a note, "To Bell Creek's truth librarian." But not everyone was thrilled. The mayor stopped showing up to events. Fraser tried to pivot into victimhood, claiming librarian cancel culture had gone too far. And suddenly, the town council meetings required security, a half-asleep part-timer from the sheriff's office who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The thing is, I hadn't even tried to make this political. But they made it political for me. Every step I took, every fact I posted, every corruption I uncovered, made me more dangerous to the people who'd always had power and thought they were untouchable. And then Dana asked me the question that changed everything. You ever think about running? I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my latte. Me? Emily Carr? Mayor? But she wasn't joking. You already exposed more corruption in 3 weeks than anyone's done in decades. People trust you. And they're angry. They want someone who isn't one of them. I spent the next few nights tossing in bed, staring at the ceiling, imagining yard signs that said Emily Carr, books, not bullshit. It was stupid. It was wild. So naturally, I filed the paperwork. Bell Creek hadn't had a contested mayoral race in 10 years. Donnelly ran unopposed every time. No debates. No platforms. Just signs and name recognition. The machine. So I bought 1 box of signs. Simple navy blue with white letters. Emily Carr for mayor, truth first. By the next morning, they were up on a dozen lawns. By the end of the week, over 100. Because here's the secret sauce. When you give people the option to believe in someone who isn't a sleaze, who doesn't pretend to care while pocketing checks, they jump on it like lifeboats from a sinking ship. And Bell Creek was sinking. The town budget was a mess. Our infrastructure was 40 years old and duct-taped with temporary fixes. The council had spent more on an artificial Christmas tree than on sidewalk repairs. And every single zoning decision was tied to the same 3 names, Fraser, Donnelly, and some developer cousin out of Baton Rouge. So I knocked on doors. I met people at the diner. I hosted a books and ballots event at the library where I served donuts and let people air their grievances with the town over coffee. I didn't promise miracles. I promised honesty, transparency, a fair shot. And for the first time in my life, people saw me. Not the quiet woman with her cardigan buttoned wrong and glasses fogging up in the cold. Not the weird librarian. But someone who knew how to fight back. And fight smart. And the mayor? He panicked. He tried to launch a counter-campaign with the slogan, "Keep Bell Creek Steady." Hilarious, given that he'd already been under review by the State Ethics Commission. He accused me of being radical, of having outside influences, of weaponizing the press. I released a video reading those statements verbatim from the comfort of the children's reading corner, with stuffed animals around me and a rainbow poster behind my head that read, "Read banned books." The video went viral. For Bell Creek standards, anyway, 4,000 views in a town of 6,400. 2 weeks before the vote, someone egged my car. The library's book drop got stuffed with wet leaves and old rotisserie chickens. Real mature. I installed cameras, quietly handed the footage to Dana, and she turned it into a scathing op-ed about intimidation tactics. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because they were panicking. And people could see it. I kept showing up. 1 house, 1 coffee, 1 disgruntled citizen at a time. Because sometimes revenge doesn't look like fire. Sometimes it looks like paperwork, campaigns, and turning a town against the people who thought they owned it. Election day in Bell Creek doesn't feel like history in the making. It feels like stale donuts, half-hearted hellos, and the whine of ancient voting machines that sound like they're trying to fax God. But this time, something was different. I knew at the moment I walked into the town hall at 6:57 a.m. The line. There had never been a line. Old men in denim jackets. Soccer moms in leggings. Teenagers fresh off their first 18th birthday. Even grumpy Mrs. Greeley, who once called me a spinster with a stapler, stood patiently, holding her voter ID and a Tupperware of lemon bars. People weren't just voting. They were showing up. By noon, Dana texted me. Turnout's already double the last election. They're scared. them being the usual suspects. Donnelly had gone full trench warfare by the final week, plastering Bell Creek in last-minute attack mailers. He accused me of wanting to defund the police, turn the library into a woke sanctuary, and replace the Christmas tree with a diversity snowflake. I laughed so hard I snorted tea out of my nose. It didn't matter. The people weren't buying what he was selling anymore. They'd seen the backdoor deals. They'd seen the arrogance, the entitlement, the way the council snickered at valid concerns. And now they were done. Election night, I refused to go to any watch party. I sat behind the circulation desk at the library with a pot of coffee, a bag of peanut M&Ms, and my old cat Sylvia, curled up in a cardboard box labeled discards. Around 9:15 p.m., the library phone rang. Emily Carr, came the voice of Council Secretary Jeanette Parlow. Yes, you won. Silence. Wait, won? You're the new mayor of Bell Creek. By 63%. Clean sweep. I sat there, completely still, hand wrapped around a chipped mug, while my heart jackhammered in my chest. Sylvia meowed once. Judgmentally. The next 10 minutes were a blur, Dana bursting through the library doors in a puffer jacket, holding her laptop in one hand and a bottle of sparkling apple cider in the other. A couple of high schoolers from the debate club appeared with handmade signs, Mayor Carr FTW. Even the usually grumpy postman wandered in to say, I didn't vote for you at first. But I changed my mind. I wasn't born for power. I wasn't groomed for it. But I'd earned it. The next morning, Donnelly resigned. Not just from the mayor's office, but from public life entirely. A short statement, time to reflect, blah blah blah. What it really meant. He knew the subpoenas were coming. And I wasn't the kind of mayor who covered tracks. Frazier? He tried to pull a comeback speech at the next council meeting. Claimed he was being persecuted by a librarian mob. The audience laughed. He resigned a week later, citing stress. I call it consequences. By my first official day in office, I had already filed ethics complaints, demanded a forensic audit of city contracts, and launched a transparency initiative. Every meeting was now live-streamed. Every contract posted online. I even held office hours with Emily at the library on Thursdays. Because I never wanted another citizen to feel what I felt that night they laughed at me. Invisible. Dismissed. Powerless. Now I had the gavel. And I planned to use it. But not for revenge, not just for revenge. For justice. And for every quiet woman who had to smile politely while being told her concerns were too emotional, or her research too passionate, or her voice too high-pitched. Because my voice had built a movement. And Bell Creek had finally listened. People think the real work ends after an election. That once you win, you get a nice office, a plaque with your name, and people finally listen to you without eye rolls. Let me tell you what you actually get. A chair that smells like feet and Lysol. A budget so convoluted it might have been written in cuneiform. And an inbox full of town secrets nobody wanted touched. By the second week of being mayor, I realized something important. The power structure in Bell Creek didn't start with Donnelly or Frazier. It started decades ago when the same last names kept winning elections, handing contracts to cousins, and stapling community pride slogans over crumbling infrastructure. What did I do? I pulled out a clipboard and got to work. Librarian style. First order of business? The city's procurement records. Turns out, Bell Creek had been overpaying for everything. We'd spent $82,000 on digital signage upgrades that were really just outdated LED boards from a company co-owned by a council member's brother-in-law. I flagged it, filed it, and called in the state auditor. Second, that zoning committee I'd tried to warn months ago, dissolved. I replaced it with a volunteer advisory board made up of retired engineers, teachers, and yes, a very feisty retired librarian named Nora, who once threatened to duel the town's treasurer over a misfiled receipt. She brought her own ruler. For discipline. We called ourselves the Clean Shelf Committee. Yes, it stuck. And every time someone asked how I got the idea, I told them the truth. I was angry. I was angry they ignored me, dismissed me, laughed at me, and did it to others too. Anger, when organized, is incredible. It's not chaos. It's fuel. And I plan to burn every rotten policy in the town's dusty filing cabinet. Of course, not everyone was thrilled. Old guard types grumbled at the diner. The phrase "book tyrant" was spray-painted on my car. That one actually made me laugh. Some goth teen later apologized and offered to repaint it, which was sweet. The local hardware store started giving me free duct tape and winking every time I walked in. I kept pushing. We instituted participatory budgeting. We opened library hours on Sundays. We redirected festival funds to rebuild the Creek Bridge that had been under review since 1997. But my proudest moment? Installing a glass wall behind the council dais. Symbolic? Hell yes. But also literal. Everyone would now see what went on. No more smoke-filled rooms. No more whispers. If you wanted to screw over Bell Creek, you'd have to do it in full daylight with the whole town watching. And they were watching. Our next council meeting broke viewership records. Local kids watched with popcorn. Dana live-tweeted every eyebrow raise. And when I proposed freezing payouts to Westwood Development, the corrupt firm that kicked off my crusade, it passed unanimously. Even the former cronies knew the wind had changed. Of course, the revenge wasn't just policy. That would be too easy. Revenge, real revenge, was watching the old power players line up for city contracts they used to get without blinking and hearing me say, "Submit a proposal. If it's competitive, you'll be considered. If it's not, you won't." That's fair, isn't it? Their faces? Pure theater. They weren't used to being challenged by someone with receipts, highlighters, and a steely librarian death stare. One of Fraser's friends muttered, "You think this is over?" And I smiled. Because it wasn't over. Not until the whole system had been documented, exposed, and rebuilt. Not until every citizen had a seat at the table, and not the damn kids' table either. A year after I stood behind the library desk and found out I'd won the mayoral race, Bell Creek looks different. Not dramatically. We're not some glittering utopia. The sidewalks still crack in winter. The traffic light at 3rd and Elm still flashes yellow for no good reason. But underneath the ordinary hum of small-town life, something essential has shifted. People know their power now. And that, more than anything, is the legacy I wanted. Take the library, for example. It used to be the town's afterthought, a place to park kids or escape your spouse for an hour. Now, it's the hub. We turned the old basement into a co-working space. We run civic literacy programs. People come not just to check out books, but to learn how to file FOIA requests, how to read budgets, how to speak at town hall without being silenced. You should have seen the look on my face the first time an 11-year-old named Darren asked, "Mayor Carr, is it legal for a town council to vote without a quorum?" I could have cried. I didn't dismantle the old boys club by shouting. I did it by teaching others how to read the manual they were never handed. Meanwhile, the former rulers of Bell Creek? Donnelly lives in Florida now. No charges, he cut a deal, handed over records, disappeared like a ghost into early retirement. Rick Fraser opened a YouTube channel about cancel culture and taking your town back, which got demonetized after 6 months due to community guideline violations. The only remaining reminder of them is a cracked bench behind Town Hall with a plaque that reads, "Dedicated to public service." I keep it there. As a warning. Now, when I walk down Main Street, people nod. Not in that exaggerated, suck-up way, but in acknowledgement. Like you do when you see someone who's stood up not just for themselves, but for everyone who's ever been told to sit down and shut up. Sometimes people ask me, was it all revenge? No. But it started that way. It started when I was laughed at. When a room full of men with ties too wide and minds too narrow told me to stick to recommending books. When they put their greed above my town and assumed no one would notice. But I noticed. And I remembered. And I turned their smirks into the sound of chairs scraping the floor as they left office one by one. Revenge isn't always fire and brimstone. Sometimes it's procedural, bureaucratic, patient. It smells like toner ink and chalk dust and stale council coffee. Sometimes it comes from a librarian who was tired of being quiet. And when it finally lands, it doesn't feel like rage. It feels like peace. Final notes from Emily Carr, mayor of Bell Creek and proud librarian forever. Never underestimate the woman with the file folders. Don't laugh at people just because they speak softly. If you're going to fight corruption, bring snacks. And a plan. Because revenge, when done right, isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of everything better.